Primarily what we're doing is three things. We have an organic farm that we maintain in a city-owned park, which we hope is creating a template for other groups who might want to utilize some of the underutilized land owned by the city of Detroit. We have created a food buying club called the Ujamaa Food Buying Club, which is a once-a-month food buying cooperative, which we hope in the next year to morph into a brick-and-mortar cooperative food store. And we've been instrumental in creating food policy for the city of Detroit. In fact, specifically a food security policy that was passed in March of 2008, and we're shepherding the creation of a Detroit Food Policy Council. Community food security is this idea that all the members of a community should have access to affordable, nutritious, culturally appropriate food. And so Detroit is not really food secure because there's many areas of the city where residents don't have access to fresh produce. They only have access to canned, frozen, packaged foods, if you can even call them that, but very little access to whole, healthy foods. As of 2007, the last major grocer left the city of Detroit, which was Farmer Jack. Now, I grew up in Detroit. I'm 53 years old, and when I was a child, there were many national chains in Detroit, including Wrigley's, Chatham, A&P, Farmer Jack, and others. But now there are no major grocers in the city of Detroit. Most of the grocery stores in Detroit are smaller stores, so we have a very serious problem both in terms of access to fresh produce in the city of Detroit. We have a serious problem in terms of the quality of the food, because oftentimes the quality of the food which is sold in the inner city in Detroit is markedly different than the quality of food which is sold in the ring, the suburban ring that surrounds Detroit. And we have a problem with the ownership of the food stores, and thus who derives the economic benefit from the buying and selling of food in the city of Detroit. Well, the biggest thing that's unique about Detroit are these vast tracts of unused or underutilized land in the city of Detroit. There are, according to the city planning department, 103,000 vacant parcels in the city of Detroit, which earlier today Mike Ham said equates to about 6,000 or 7,000 acres, which have the potential to be farmed. That, combined with season extension technology, gives us the ability to grow a large percentage of the food which is consumed in the city of Detroit. And also we have this vast supply of fresh water, which is unique really anywhere in the world. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that has the access to fresh water that we have in the Michigan area. So those are two of the things that are unique about Detroit's situation. There's great interest developing in the city of Detroit, and part of it has to do with the decline in the economy and people just looking at how they can reduce their food bills. So clearly, if you can grow 10, 20, 25% of the food that you consume, then your food bill is going to be reduced. So just on that level, many people are developing an interest in it who perhaps were not interested in the past. Now, I can personally testify that I have friends who have watched me do a backyard garden for many years and just kind of watch with interest, and they come by and talk to me while I worked in the garden. And one in particular called me last year and said he was in a grocery store buying tomatoes and buying greens, and he thought about the fact that at least during the summer months and the fall that I don't buy those things, and he was spending money on it. So it hit him, the logic of it hit him in his pocketbook. And so that's one of the reasons that people are developing a greater interest in urban agriculture. But also people are beginning to see that it is a way to create greater access to fresh produce. And so there's a burgeoning movement in the city of Detroit for the development of urban agricultural projects. In fact, sometimes Detroit is being called the Emerald City because we have so many backyard gardens, community gardens, school gardens, and small-scale farms. The health of the economy of a community and the health and well-being of its residents are inseparable. And so on the most basic level, as you stimulate the economy and people have greater access to wealth, people generally are able to take advantage of choices that promote health and well-being. That's on the most basic level. Of course, we have in Detroit an epidemic of obesity, of high blood pressure, of asthma, of diabetes. and other diseases that are controllable by diet. So if people don't have access to the foods that help to promote health and well-being, then we see a continuation of this kind of the poor state of health that we see among many of the residents in the city of Detroit. So there's a direct connection in terms of access to healthy food choices. But also agriculture benefits a community because it contributes to the aesthetics. People feel better about their neighborhood. Gardening is an intergenerational activity, so we tend to have elders coming out, working with younger people and working with middle-aged people, and we have all kind of conversations that occur in gardens and farms which are healthy. You know, this kind of social fabric is part of the health and well-being of the community as well. Many of us, I can say for myself in particular, and many other people in the organization that I represent, have been activists in the Black freedom movement. And so one of the tendencies within that movement has been to study traditional African cultures and to study the values and the worldview that provide the undergirding for those cultures. And so probably the most basic concept that you'll find in every African society is this understanding that everything is interconnected, that human beings are part of the creation that we live in, as opposed to the Western paradigm, which tends to have this idea that human beings are here to conquer the earth, this idea of manifest destiny, that, you know, we're here to control. So Africans have always understood that we have to live in harmony with nature, and in fact that there's a spiritual essence that runs through all of creation. That trees are alive, that the grass is alive, that the vegetation is alive, that even things like rocks that we consider to be inanimate objects are alive too. And so there's this respect for nature. Now, unfortunately, when Europeans came to Africa, they saw this and they said, oh, they're animists, they're worshiping nature. Africans weren't worshiping nature, they were worshiping the life force which runs through all nature. So this kind of holistic worldview is very important as we look to moving towards a paradigm that promotes health and well-being, both of individuals, of communities, of humanity, and of the planet as a whole. You know, the course that humanity is on right now is a course of destruction. And if we don't turn it around, then we have the very real possibility of humanity destroying ourselves and I don't want to say destroying the earth, but ruining the earth, let's say, for future generations, because eventually nature will overcome whatever human beings do. But we have the opportunity to look back. In fact, there's this concept from Ghana, from the Akan people of Ghana, called Sankofa. And it's represented by a symbol, which is a bird reaching back, picking up a seed off of its back. And the idea is that you have to go back and you have to retrieve certain cultural ideas in order to move forward. We don't want to go back and live in 14th century Sudan. That's not the idea. But there's certain ideas, again, that provide the undergirding for African societies that we can retrieve and use as we move forward. So part of that, one of those ideas is this idea of interconnectedness, of holism, and of our responsibility to everything that exists. This idea that they call in ancient Egypt, they call it the sonum bonum, or this idea of the greater good, that whatever we do has to benefit not just us in this time period, but our practices have to benefit everything that exists. We have to have this idea of functioning as stewards for all of humanity, for all of the planet, and for all of the organisms that share this planet with us.